Anyone who is not practicing these movements is in fact not practicing a part of who they are. If you're not capable physically, then you're not capable. That's it. And who wants to not be capable? It's not because of what your body looks like, but it's because of what your body can do. The way I define functional movement is that it has to be practical and adaptable. A mind that meditates is a mind that learns about itself. It discovers itself. If you do not practice who you choose to be, you will not become who you choose to be.
A man way ahead of his time who has been running barefoot, diving into dark, icy waters, fasting, taking cold plunges, and training wild or primal decades before these were a thing. Breath hold work record holder and the founder of MovNat, keeping the natural movement of our species alive. Our guest today on the Settle or Be Better podcast is Mr. Erwan Le Corre, who's going to be talking to us about natural movement, breath hold work, and give us a wake up call about our survival skills. So, welcome, Mr. Erwan, and over to you. Why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about what is MovNat and what life experiences led you to this founding?
Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the lovely introduction. Your question, I'm going to do my best to keep the answer not too long. MovNat is the practice of the whole range of natural movement skills. So the concept of natural movement is also a concept that I defined as all the movement abilities that we all possess universally, all of us human beings. So if we were to ask ourselves, how does a wild tiger become and stay fit? It would probably make no sense that they would have to go to a gym to isolate the muscles, to get those muscles stronger, and then go on an elliptical for cardio and then add some stretching to that. That would make no sense. Why? Because to become fit and to stay fit, the wild tiger has to move naturally in their natural environment, the way they're designed to, and it's as simple as that. And the question is, can we do the same as human beings? And yes, absolutely, we can. We can and should be doing the same. So when we look at young children, before they have any idea of what exercise is, especially proper exercise is, they are already intuitively, instinctively practicing the full range of their natural movements. So they crawl, they roll, and then they stand on their feet, they walk, they start to run, they hang, they climb, they move things around and toss them, carry them. They do all these things. There's no need for a program because the program is already built in. It's in us, all of us, regardless of being born anywhere, from any country, any ethnicity, any gender. None of that matters. And so we should be doing this our whole life because it's fun to do, it's enjoyable to do, it keeps us strong, keeps us flexible. There are many physiological and mental benefits to this practice. So MovNat is both a physical education curriculum and a fitness program that understands the place that our own human natural movement has or should have in our life, and teaches people to do it. So not only provide the inspiration and the motivation to value this approach to physical exercise as, yes, it makes sense. I did it when I was a kid. Why did I ever stop? Number one. And number two, let's say we all have some ability to run or jump or move on all fours. We do. But does that mean that we're efficient at it? And there are techniques, just like a martial art will And martial art will acknowledge that we'll have some ability to defend ourselves, for instance. And nonetheless, we can mindfully practice and learn to begin with a number of techniques that will make us more efficient at doing it, at defending ourselves. Well, apply that reasoning to everything else: climbing, running, jumping and landing, lifting objects, heavy objects, and carrying them, etc. And then you like, oh yeah, there's a lot of techniques we can learn and practice to become very competent at all these movements. And competent for what? Well, for real world physical activity or physical task, and that can be day-to-day movements, and that can be movements or physical actions and efforts we have to do in more challenging situations. So that's what MovNat is about. In a nutshell, I would say it's the physical education I wish I had received in school, and that did not. And I believe it's the physical education that I believe everyone should receive at a young age, and that almost anywhere, it's not taught anywhere in any country.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, that's something that really great you said, because I remember as a child in school, I used to absolutely hate the physical education period because there were these structured, like five aspects or skills that we had to work on. And it was a test, an annual test, where you have to, run from one place to other, take a long jump, and do push ups and crunches, like these few things. And that's how you were, assessed yearly, as you're graded as a part of your curriculum. And that was something I absolutely hated. And I wish that we had these kind of trainings that could create the love for movement, and get us back, connect us with our natural
Yeah.
movement. It could create really educated and informed adults, if that is done from our schooling, because we grew up for 25 years not moving and developing sort of a hate or a no love for movement as such. And then changing those things after 25 years, after 30 years, it becomes quite a task, and we get lost in all of these things. And I've also been reading your book recently, just the first few sections right now. And I absolutely loved a sentence that you mentioned over there, that we don't become a mover, we are born a mover. I have it with me right here.
Thank you.
And that is really amazing, because right now, how people are becoming aware about fitness or health in general, it's usually after they get diagnosed with a disease, like diabetes or heart health, something like that. And that's when they begin their journey towards fitness, and it's only a medicine for them. So like the doctor says, now you have to go for a walk, you have to begin weight training, whatever it is, and it becomes a chore for them. Not It's something that they have to do, not something that they want to willingly do. So that really is a great way to go about it, and to learn more about movement. And we need more people like you here in India as well. And we hope to host you sometime, and get more learn more about this form, and this getting back to our natural instincts. So
We need to talk to the Minister of Health of India and to establish a program in schools so that young Indians, and of course, it would benefit any age, because anyone who is not practicing these movements is in fact not practicing a part of who they are. It's a part of who we are. And so when you end up not being able to run at all, or to jump at all, or to even get up or from the ground and back down to the ground in a way that's comfortable, or without using your hands, you don't even have that basic mobility anymore, or your breathing is not good, etc. And so, yes, it is missing. So if you neglect those natural behaviors of your body, you are neglecting your body. And if you're neglecting your body, you're neglecting yourself. So there are so many ways to exercise, new ways, some ancient ways also. But the most ancient way of exercising is simply natural movement, is to do what Little kids do. They do that before they know what crunches are, or biceps curls, or even yoga is, or Tai Chi, or anything. What it is that they are doing, that we all did, all of us, we all did when we were a little boy or a little girl, was natural movement. It's more ancient than anything else. It's non traditional. It's not about a tradition. It's not about a doctrine. It's not about a science. It is the most ancient physical behavior there is, that is instinctive in all of us when we're little children, because for a very long time in the history of mankind, of womankind, like all of us, if we didn't develop those abilities, we would be useless in nature. We would be useless to ourselves and useless to others if we could not move in all these ways. We had to. It was not like, oh, I have the option of doing that, or I worked so hard and I make good money, and now I'm going to pay someone to teach me this. It's like a luxury thing, exercising. No, it's you can't run. It's a big problem. You can't climb. Well, it's a big problem. You can't move on all fours and go under obstacles, and lift loads and carry them. That's a big problem. It was not never a an option, as if, oh, I could do this to exercise, or impossible, impossible. And let's
Absolutely.
remember that when we were kids, we moved in all these ways. Some were completely exploratory and silly and fun, but also running or jumping and climbing and jumping again and hanging was fun. There was a lot of fun to that. And then we go to school, they show us those movements. You said you were bored or frustrated because it was limiting and it was not fun. And you go into a gym and it's the same thing. You go like this and you like this, and it's limiting the body and it's not fun. It's a chore. So fun is not about doing silly things. It's about the enjoyment, the joy. And that joy is an instant gratification, which means normally we are told exercise, but do not expect instant gratification. You have to wait to see the result. And then what are the results? Well, let me check in the mirror. Oh yeah, that's the result here. There's a result here. Oh, it's not there yet. I'm not satisfied. Okay, a little more chore, so that ultimately I'll get the result. Because I am told that I cannot have instant gratification. Children, when they move naturally, have instant gratification. As a matter of fact, if it didn't, they probably would not do it because they're smart. Like, I'm not getting satisfaction right away, and forget about it. I'll do something that gives me the satisfaction right away. So why is it that we are made to believe that it should be like that? No, it doesn't have to be like that. So even it doesn't matter if you're 30, 50, 70, it may become a little more difficult as you are older, maybe. But you will enjoy balancing on your feet, moving on all fours, rolling on your back, hanging and swinging, and maybe jumping and landing. It doesn't have to be something crazy out there in the wild and dangerous. It can be very simple and gentle. It can be done at ground level in a way that is safe, in a way that's progressive, but most importantly, in a way that you enjoy in the very moment, in the here and in the now of the moment, of the
Absolutely, that
activity.
was really well explained, and I'm sure our listeners are getting a lot of insight out of this. Moving ahead, I wanted to know what is your view about how we have evolved over the centuries. Because say the gym or some fitness equipments, for example, are the new technology in the fitness industry that we have developed, and I'm sure that there was some need that was noticed a few years ago that someone invented this, and the whole point of technology and all of these new inventions is to make human life easier, or to make our things, make our lives easier, and make it better in some ways. And a lot of people would view natural movement as, why should we do this, because we have these options, and haven't we gotten ahead of that time? So how do you sort of deal with that, and what is your opinion on that?
which is to state that we now know better, which is exactly why we are telling the young children, don't do this, you're going to hurt yourself, don't do this, it's not the right time or the right place. And in fact, it's never the right time and never the right place, because those movements are seen as the wrong behavior. It's wrong. It's wrong to behave like that. Like, oh, well, you're a little monkey. You're a little, it's not serious. It's not proper. It's not human. It's somehow a low expression of the body. What is wrong is actually to look at it that way. Because obviously, all of us are doing it with great energy and great joy when we're kids. There's a reason for that. It does show how important it is that we do it. And only it should never be prevented. It should be encouraged, because if we were encouraged, we would become very strong, very capable, in very athletic, but in a natural way, all of us. Um, all of us in our own way, by the way, we have different bodies, we have different genetics, we have different abilities. That is a fact. But we still, all of us would have a baseline, the whole scope of, we would not be impressed or intimidated thinking, oh my God, I've got to run for 10 kilometers or have to hang and swing and jump there and land there. It would be like, yes, of course, I've been doing that my whole life. So why it is important? Because if you're not capable, if you cannot operate your body in all these ways, then you're not capable. If you're not capable physically, then you're not capable. That's it. And who wants to not be capable? So how do we acquire self-esteem? Because we know that we are capable. That's an important part of it. That's not the only part. But to know one's own abilities and skills and experience, and to know that, okay, I can rely on that. I can rely on my social skills. I can rely on my education. I know how to read and write and organize my mind and work on this and work on that. And this is very important. If we didn't have that, if we did not, we would not feel, we wouldn't have self-confidence in life. And we probably would have poor self-esteem. So it doesn't matter. Maybe we come from the countryside, and we feel capable because we know how to take care of the animals, take care of the fields, take care of a number of things. So it's a different form of education, and it's equally important, because without growing food, nobody can eat and survive, including those who live in cities. So that is very important. But that is knowledge, that is capability, and that capability is expected from you. And the more you are capable, the more proud you can feel about yourself. And that's a healthy pride. The more self-esteem you can have about yourself. So regardless of the type or the field or the kind, uh, a form of capability is important. Okay. Now, that physical capability is often ignored and dismissed as if it did not matter, when in fact it does matter. Because who do you call when you are not personally capable of doing something physically? Then you call for help, for assistance. Maybe your life is in danger because you are not able to move your body out of the danger. Maybe you cannot save someone because you're not able to intervene and to do something that could be done right away without having to call or wait. some professional assistance. Um, so, have we found better? Well, it depends on your value system. It depends on what you consider is good and therefore or not good or better, and it's a value, it's a value system. So if you value cosmetics, if you value the surface, what your body looks like, you may want to go for some forms of bodybuilding, of gym training, because you're like, well, my biceps. If you're a man, typically you want a certain body, you want the shoulders and pecs and biceps to look a certain way. If you're a woman, you're gonna focus on your abdominals and your glutes and your legs or whatever that is, because you're thinking, if I can put the effort enough and maybe also pay attention to how I eat, but if I can change my body to look like that, I will feel satisfied about myself. I'll feel good because of the way I look. That is an okay expectation. I mean, why not? It To some people it doesn't matter, and there's no judgment to be had about that. My point is, if that is the only thing that you expect from your body, to look a certain way for what is vanity, you'll always be frustrated. You will never be satisfied, ever, because it'll never be enough. It'll never be exactly the image that you may expect in your mind. So it's a bit of an illusion. Um, it's a bit of a pursuit that is limiting. So do we know better? Let's say it's not about the protocol. It's not about the specific fitness program. It's not what we want to look at. How do we exercise first? But why? Why is it that we do it? What do we expect from it? In my perspective, my mindset, and what I teach is, don't you want to have a body that is capable? Because if you have a body that is capable because you made it to become capable, that is where true self-confidence comes from. Self-esteem and self-confidence. It's not because of what your body looks like, but it's because of what your body can do. And that is more important, what your body can do. You can be helpful when your body is capable. You can be helpful to yourself, means you may not need to ask others to help you, and you may help others if needed. You may carry a person on your back. You may have a strength to do it, have a body that's again capable. You may run very fast to bring some medicine to someone. You may be able to jump over an obstacle to go and help someone that is in trouble. And you never know. You can never say, oh, well, this situation will never happen in my life. How do you know? You can't possibly know. So it's a good idea to go through life knowing that you practice your body enough, not to make it look like a certain way, but to make it capable of responding a certain way if the need arises. And that's a different philosophy, I admit. So either you understand and value that philosophy or that mindset and then put it into practice, or you don't, because you're just thinking, well, I don't really care about that. Just give me a mirror, and then give me the gym, and then I'll look what's the result in the mirror, and that will be my satisfaction. No, no judgment. It's one way to look at it. I present a different way.
Absolutely. And that totally makes sense because, I have personally been lifting weights and strength training for the last, say, 4 to 5 years. And I've always had this debate in my mind that does it really, do these skills really help me in the real world? Like, is it actually, does it translate that well, or is it really helping me in those kind of situations? And there's always been this debate about it, I mean, you would see yourself grow in terms of how many weights you rack on your barbell, or how many
Yes.
repetitions you might do, but how would you know that these skills are actually going to help you, or this strength from the strength training that you're doing is going to be applicable in real life? Because you would really not understand until the situation arrives, and it would be unfortunate to realize at that moment that you aren't able to do what you should be easily be able to do if you had the right resources. And it really makes us feel very resourceful, like you rightly said, having these skills and being more in touch with where we came from and what we were meant to move like. So that was really insightful, and it makes so much sense now, because now being introduced to natural movement, it does make sense to me personally also, that how this debate of my strength applying in the real world or not, and how can we develop this. So that really makes sense. Thank you so much for explaining that. And over the years, you must have heard about functional training or animal flow movement getting a lot of attention, and also for some good reasons. But what, according to you, is missing from these sort of trainings? Because the whole point of moving towards functional training or animal movement was to get out of this boxed sort of fitness that we are doing. Like, we go to the box gym, and we use these machines, and it's not really something you're doing that actively. But what do you think is missing from this functional sort of training, and what can be added to it?
It really depends on the. I would have to look at the specific training that is done and that is called functional, because functional can mean a lot of things. If you ask me if is natural movement, MovNat, which I call MovNat, is it functional? I'll say 100%. It's very functional. Um, and if you look at a functional fitness protocol, of course you'll say, well, that is functional. And yet, those two forms of training will look completely different. Um, I would say you may practice functional movements. Typically, they're done without any machine. It's typically you explain functional movements because they are like whole body movement as opposed to isolation movement, on different planes, different. But the way I define functional movement is that it has to be practical and adaptable. So if you do lunges, for instance, you're like in a split squat, and you you do split squats as a form of movement, and say that is functional. Yes, it is functional, but is it practical and adaptable? So the question would be, can we practice the body in ways that are obviously useful, not in a theory, not as in, so what is this movement good for? And you have to ask yourself, or ask the question, what is this good for? Well, if the movement is natural, it should be obvious. If you are balancing on, say, on a board, it may not be a real obstacle because it's maybe 1 inch of the floor. There's no real necessity or danger for doing it. But what you're doing, you're simulating to a degree a situation or context where you would have to balance across an obstacle like this. Um, it's obvious that you're balancing. It's obvious that it's a practical movement that would be done exactly the same in the real life, in the real world. Just maybe it would be a real obstacle, a real void, and if you fall, maybe you hurt yourself or you die or something like that. I don't know. It means you will have no other choice. You cannot step off the board and be okay. If you step off the board, you fall. And that is when you do not need to ask yourself, is this functional? obviously it is, and it is also not only practical in a way that is obvious, it's also adaptable. It means that every time you change the context, you change the demand, you change how your body must respond. So now, let's say you're balancing on a board and it's flat and it's relatively narrow, but not too narrow. And that's one, and it's on the ground or on the floor. That's one entry level. You must adapt to that board because you cannot step off the board. You're pretending, hey, if I step here, it's hot lava and my foot is going to burn or something. You make it playful. Okay. Now let's imagine you can elevate that board 1 foot above the ground. Now it changes everything, or it changes a lot, because now there's a real void. Now 2 feet above. And now that board is not flat anymore, it's rounded. And now it's not very stable anymore. It starts to move a bit. And now it's not going horizontally anymore. It's going a little upward. And now you're balancing like that. It's still a practical movement. But because you've changed all these variations, the context, you've changed the context, it's not exactly the same kind of balancing. From a skill perspective, it's the same, but the adaptability of that skill now is much higher because the context where you balance has changed. So that is truly functional. It's highly practical and it's adaptable to the context where you do the movement. You don't need to scratch your head and be like, what is that movement good for? Well, obviously, it's good for your ability to stay balanced and safe at this level of practice in this kind of context. And you apply the same for an object that you lift. It's not just how heavy it is, it's like, what's the shape of it? How do I grasp it? Oh, well, that's different. A log is different than a rock. A rock is different than a barbell. A barbell is different than a sandbag. A sandbag is different than a human body. So what is your experience with all this variety of context? The objects you manipulate, the surfaces where you balance or jump and land or climb, it's going to change everything. So if let's say you go in a gym and you use a machine that trains your lats and you go like this 10 times and maybe it's heavy, but does that mean that now you can go and climb any surface? Absolutely not, because there are so many types of surfaces: a rope, a tree, a metal bar, horizontal or vertical, a rock. There's so many ways to climb. If you are not sufficiently practicing the variety of these different surfaces, then how do you know? So I know that it's a lot to think about, because like, how can I? It's so much more than just going to the gym and be like, today I'm doing upper body, tomorrow I'll do lower body, and in the upper body today I do the front, and tomorrow I'll do the back. It's like, what are you made of? Like parts, and it's like you're a mechanics. It's like a car or something, and it is almost like if our ancestors, all of us, European, Indian, African, whatever, were to look at us, they would laugh probably. It would be like, what are they doing? What is this? And then we'll look at ourselves in the mirror, and it would be like, why? Because to them, they were much more working as communities, as tribes and families and clans and all. So if they had ever seen someone just doing some form of exercise just for their vanity, they would be like, okay. But if they were to know that someone or everyone is, say, they go on a run, or they do things together because they have to be together, because if they don't, do things together or even individually, but with a sense of what it can bring also to others, to the community they belong to, then they would feel pretty useless and selfish, because they would be whatever they put the energy in would be of no use to others. That would be a problem. So I like the idea that when I personally train my body and the physical capability of my body, I know that it's useful not just to myself, it's useful to my children if they need it, to my family, to my neighbors, to complete strangers. I sometimes have pulled people out of the water and they were about to get drowned. If I had not been physically capable to do it, there were people around and they were yelling and be like, somebody does something. Well, who? Not the people who were saying somebody does something or there's a problem. Clearly, they could see there was a problem and none of them was responding. Why? Because they knew that they were not physically capable of doing it. So it's not enough to have a phone and call for assistance because it might be too late. It would have been too late in those 3 times I did that because I like to spend time by the sea or the ocean. So like beach ready body, that expression, beach ready body. Well, it's not what you look like. It can you sprint and maybe hold your breath and dive and then swim with someone. There are so many skills. So does it take time to practice all of that to become good? Yes. To learn the techniques. Yes, it does. But again, it's part of physical education. If it was to start early, then by the time you're grown up, you don't need to do that much anymore to just maintain your baseline capability. Just do a little of everything from time to time. Sometimes you go on a run, you add a few jumps to that. Sometimes you go climb a few things and you lift a few things, and you just check out that you're still capable, and that's it. It's just as important as making sure that other skills that you've acquired in your life, you still have them, playing an instrument, professional skills, other skills that you may have learned in school or at home from your grandma or your grandpa, I don't know.
Absolutely. That was really well explained, and I was literally having goosebumps while you were talking about saving lives and being capable about doing that at that moment. And that's really the need of the hour, because just before COVID, we thought that nothing like that was going to happen. Like we never imagined that that sort of a thing was coming upon us, the whole world.
Yes.
And we were just living our lives. We were, in fact, even seeing it happen in different countries, and we never thought it would come here. So why think about that, why look at that news, but it did happen. And just like that, if that big kind of a situation can happen, any situation can come in your life which you might not have
Yes.
expected or might not be prepared for. So it's really the need of the hour and not an option, like you rightly said. So thank you for explaining that.
And it's actually anyone who goes on, let's say, Instagram will see so many kinds of videos and some beautiful things, some completely stupid things. All there's something for everyone. Okay, but the videos of accidents, of falls, of things that happen, dramatic. Um, they show you that a lot of these events happen every day. Every day, something could happen to you or to someone that's right in front of you. And some of the situations could be avoided just simply because people would be more capable. And some situations could be solved more quickly and nobody to get hurt if the people around who are witnessing were all able to respond. And the gym training is not going to provide that. Can it give you, let's say, some strength? Yes. But strength alone is not sufficient because strength without the ability to control and to direct that strength is only partially useful. And so that's the part that's missing, is the skill. It's let's use a very simple metaphor of a software versus hardware. So the hardware is very important, of course, but without the software, the hardware is absolutely useless. Now, there is a way that you can develop both the strength, the power of a hardware, and the finesse and the efficiency of a software. And that's a metaphor for the body and for its capability, and that is MovNat. That is natural movement. It means you, because when you train your movement skills, you will also develop more strength and more balance and more coordination and more flexibility, all the qualities of and it's not just physiological, okay? It's physiological, it's also neurological, it's in the brain, but all happens all at once. Why do we need to try to dissociate, which does not work and which makes things incomplete and therefore lacking? There, it is deficient. A person who trains physically in a gym, unless it's the way they train in that gym is radically changed, they will never acquire substantial physical capability just because their muscles are a little stronger and bigger or shaped a certain way that pleases the eye or pleases the mind. No. So it's a different mindset, and the mindset stems from different value, what you value. So you have to ask yourself if you value primarily what the body looks like, or if you value primarily what the body can do, is capable of doing. If you value what the body looks like, you may ultimately end up with a body that looks like more of what you want. It's very likely that you'll still never be completely satisfied, if at all. And that doesn't mean that your capability is there. If you value and prioritize that physical capability, you will develop that physical capability. It will become part of who you are. And it's also very likely that your body will look better. It will be stronger, more flexible, more coordinated, more balanced, all of that. And you will develop a naturally good looking body according to also your own physical makeup and genetics and all. But definitely the structure of the appearance of your body will also improve in the process. So you'll have both. Whereas with the other approach, you only get one aspect when you do. So that maybe will make people look at it a little different when, because
Absolutely.
nobody's explained that typically. Like a few people can talk about these things the way that
True.
they.
And, I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of our listeners are having this existential crisis moment right now, that what am I doing with my fitness training right now? What am I, where am I going and doing this? Because I personally also started feeling like that when I started reading your book and listening to you talk about this a lot more times, that, these sort of knots start opening in your mind, and when you look at it from this perspective. And I'm sure that if we give it a little more thought and planning, like we did for other trainings and other aspects of fitness, we can get there. We can begin, because right now it might seem a little overwhelming living in the city life. To achieve these sort of goals, or these sort of even to have a space where we can do these things. But I'm sure with a little planning and researching more about this would help a lot of people, and we can definitely achieve that. Moving forward, can you tell us a little bit about the pillars of natural movement? Like, what are the like you host these amazing retreats and trainings at MovNat. What is it that people, what is your aim that they go back with? What are some skill sets or particular building blocks that you work on when it comes to MovNat training?
Um, the the well, there's a simple way to look at it. The body is able to um, move in the form of locomotion, so point A to point B, or moving through space. So you have locomotive skills. You have manipulative skills, which are the skills of moving external objects, and then you have combative skills, which are um, ways to defend yourself if you are under attack. So the locomotive skills are definitely the most important. So what are they? Well, you have all the different movements that are on the ground. So that is not only moving on all fours. There are diverse ways to move on all fours. That can be rolling, different ways of rolling, different ways of moving very with your center of gravity very close to the ground. Um, and then you have all the get ups and get downs, so the transitions between lying down or sitting or kneeling on the ground to standing positions. So those are also locomotive skills. You're not moving in space in the sense of point A to point B, but you're moving upward, downward. It's still a change um, in space. So then you have, of course, everything that is locomotion on your feet because we're bipedal. So that can be walking, that can be running. There are diverse ways of walking and running. That can be, for instance, you could be walking but stepping over or under obstacles. Those are things you can do more or less efficiently. By the way, everything starts with also breath control. That's the first form of movements, to be able to control the way you breathe, including when you move. Because if you have good breath control when you just sit and focus on just that, but then you start moving, and especially start moving in nature where everything is changing, and then you start to move. Breathe in completely different ways. Then you have no breath control because it does not adapt. Again, that idea of adaptability, it does not adapt to the change of rhythm, change of movement patterns, change of environment. Um, and so then you can also jump and land. So you propel your body in the air. You become airborne. There are diverse many ways of jumping, different types of obstacles, upward, downward, sideways, for distance, without momentum, on one leg, two legs, it's three legs. Um, all that is possible, not the three legs part. And then you can, of course, hang and climb. So all this is locomotive. Balancing, obviously, balancing. So typically, balancing are simply other skills like you walk balancing or you move on all fours balancing, except that where you do it is challenging your balance to an extent where it becomes almost like a skill in itself. Walking while you balance is completely different than just walking on the flat. So those are the principles of, let's say, there are the scope of different movements that you want to be able to do, and we all can do it to a degree, but then the degree is what matters, because do we all have some basic ability to do it? Yes, but some basic ability to do it may not be enough. We want a really solid ability to do all these movements. So especially when we need more intensity, more adaptability, and yet to go through those potential obstacles while staying safe. So then the manipulative skills, lifting, carrying, throwing, or catching. And then there are so many ways to do that. And there's also so many types of objects to do that with. And then combative skills. So the principles we're looking at increasing our real world physical capability. That physical capability is impossible to have without a mental ability too, because it's the mind that moves the body, not the other way around. And there are a number of principles, 12 of them. The movements are universal. Um, they are instinctive to a degree. Again, there's an instinct to walk, an instinct to throw things, an instinct to climb, etc., etc. But if we want to retain the two most important principles that are going to make your physical practice natural, as in truly natural, because anyone can use the word natural, and in the end, you look at it, it doesn't necessarily make sense, is again practical, adaptable. Because regardless of the country, the place, the culture, or the time in history, the movements that people will have to do to stay alive are all in essence practical. That it was during a time of war, or during just working in the fields for agriculture, or hunting, walking, running, jumping, balancing, climbing, moving on all fours, lifting and carrying, throwing and catching, etc., etc., swimming, maybe swimming underwater, etc. So then you're like, well, what about fishing or hunting or playing sports? Or, well, how do you play sports? How do you play soccer or tennis? If you don't have natural movement, you don't. So it's the origin of it all is those practical movements. When you play soccer, then you need to run, and run in many ways, in fact, at different speeds in different directions, and then you need to kick the ball, which is a form of throwing an object or catching an object with your foot. And you do the same with a racket when you play tennis, like throwing something, and at the same time you somehow catch something, you throw it at the same time. Basketball, volleyball, it's the same idea. You run, you jump, you catch, you throw. All natural movements. Without natural movement, you don't have sports. Without natural movements, you don't have people who can work the fields in agriculture. Without natural movements, you don't have people who can, at least back then, now we have all these insanely destructive weapons, but back then, or still in some situations, if you need to fight, and it's unfortunate, but you will need all these natural movements. Firefighters, they don't they don't do yoga. All due respect to yoga, that's not what they need. We don't need like the best yoga experts to be firefighters to save lives. No, we need people who can climb the ladder very fast, who can jump over the obstacles. Then they can lift or drag or lift and carry a body, and to be strong enough and fast enough and capable enough to do these things. That's what you expect from a firefighter. Why? Because those natural movements are vital. That's one of the principles. They're vital. If you look at all of these natural movement abilities, they can save your life. Running can save your life or somebody else's life. Jumping over a river or something, balancing, climbing to reach safety, etc., etc. Lifting and carrying someone to get them out. There is a fire, there's a flooding, there is something. You need the natural movement. You don't need Tai Chi, you don't need yoga, you don't need ping pong, you don't need exercise machines, you need none of that. With all due respect to all these possibilities, what comes first? And what comes first in these situations in terms of priority, and what comes first as in ways of the human body to express itself and to exercise long before we created any tradition, any doctrine, any fitness protocol, is natural movement. If you look at little Indian children or French children or um, children from Kenya or from Japan or anywhere, okay, or America, what they have in common that is truly natural is that they all crawl, they all start to stand on their feet and walk and stumble and fall and roll and then they start to walk and run. All of them, all of them. If they don't learn yoga, they can't do yoga. For instance, yoga is from India. Does that mean that every single Indian child knows yoga? No, because unless they are taught, they can't do it. They don't know the asanas. They don't know the breathing. They don't know. It does not come to them naturally. It has to be learned. Why? Because it's not natural. Because it's a certain way to exercise the body and it has lots of value to it, precious value to it. But the naturalness is not there because what's truly natural comes naturally. So what comes natural to every child, every Indian child, every child from anywhere is those movements. They roll, move on all fours, they walk, they jump, and they do that with great pleasure, great satisfaction. They do that without any instruction. They do that even when they're told, no, 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 don't do it. That is the naturalness that is truly universal in all of us. And again, we should never stop doing it.
Absolutely. And that's truly said that, we are born with these instincts, we are born with these kind of natural movements, but, we tend to unlearn them our way growing up. And, unfortunately, that is what is happening. And thank you for explaining that so well, that, the ways, and this really simplifies it for us to know the pillars and know the kind of skill sets that we can begin with, and how do we know that we are doing something that is natural to us. So that was really well explained. I'm sure that clarifies a lot of doubts from our listeners. Thank you so much for explaining that. And coming to your amazing breath hold work meditation practice, um, can you tell us a little bit about that? Because in today's world, unfortunately, we are living such stressful lives. We are constantly in this fight or flight mode and putting ourselves into these situations where we literally forget to breathe, even generally normal living a normal lives, and having these practices and these meditations are really the need of the hour. And I think we should definitely take out that time from our daily lives and instill this into ourselves, so that in any situation we are able to control our breath, like you rightly said. So can you tell us a little bit about that? How does it go, and how do you what is the whole breath whole work meditation about?
Well, breathful work meditation is a meditation which specificity is to be done while holding your breath a long time. So there are many ways to meditate. There are different traditions, um, maybe different expectations, and different exercises. The breathful work meditation is done while holding your breath, not just for a few seconds, for much longer time. And why is that? Um, Typically, when we explain meditation, what is common to all meditations, the foundation of all meditations, is observe your thoughts, observe your mind. Yeah. So, who is observing the mind? The mind itself. So the mind, what is the mind? Well, it's awareness, consciousness. I like to call it experience. And so in our life, we are, because we have responsibilities, duties, or expectations, we're not like a plant in a pot waiting to be taken care of. We need to participate. We need to make decisions. We need to live and go through the world. So most of the time, our attention, that consciousness that we are, is going to be absorbed by everything external, paying attention always to everything outside of us. So number one, what is common to all practices, meditative practices, is we turn that attention within. We do not pay attention to the world anymore. So what do we pay attention to? Ourselves. So the mind, the attention of the mind is now turned towards itself, and the mind is paying attention to itself. But why? What's the point of doing that? What do we expect from it? Well, when we observe anything sufficiently, we get to become familiar with that thing and to understand it better. We learn about it. So the mind can learn about itself by paying attention to itself, the same way it can learn about anything by paying attention to anything. Ultimately, if you are attentive enough, you will learn something. You can sit by a river and just look at the flow of the river, and ultimately you will start to see and notice things that normally you would never see about this particular river, that particular spot of the river. You can look at the clouds and just do that, and then you'll become very familiar with the clouds, the way they are, the way, etc. So number one, we learn about ourselves. And when we say we, a mind that meditates is a mind that learns about itself. It discovers itself. So when we say observing thoughts, well, that's because we're used to think of the mind as thinking all the time. But that's not the only way of the mind to be and to express itself. The mind is not limited to only thinking. There are other ways that the mind can experience itself, and some of them do not require words at all. We can also imagine, we can visualize things that exist or don't exist. We can also feel. And we can also pause everything and neither feel or think or see anything, just be. So that's the purpose of meditation. Now, normally when you meditate, you are taught to breathe through the nose and to breathe slowly. Why? Because it calms the nervous system. That is one. Two, also because the focus on something, one thing, just the breath alone, will give the mind focus. It will channel its attention that normally tends to disperse itself in many ways. I'm going to think about tomorrow. I'm going to think about yesterday. I'm going to think about somewhere else at a different time. That exists or that does not exist. Doesn't matter. But that's what the mind wants to do. Why? Because it's used to do that all the time. Why? Well, because we live and we need to regulate our life. Therefore, we need to always compare and organize and consider and interpret. Is it bad? Not at all. It's very important that we do. That's what we have a consciousness for. It's cognition. It is very important that we are able to think and to structure our thinking and to anticipate and to organize and to compare and to have a value system. That's very important. But sometimes it becomes really overwhelming because that's what we do all the time. So it's important to take a pause. That's what meditation is. Let's take a break. And also taking a break from directing our attention outwardly, directing it internally. So it's very important that I present those fundamentals before I explain what's special about or different about the breath whole work meditation. So we're now focusing internally, and we are focusing on the breath. So it enables us to limit thinking because we are just focusing on the breath, and it calms the body, which is the nervous system. And when the nervous system is calmer, then the mind becomes calmer. Okay. From that place, we're calmer. We hopefully think a little less, as in a little more slowly. That is good. And we can observe our thoughts. And we're supposed to not judge our thoughts. Just let them come and go. So that's needless to say, because thoughts will come and they will go anyway. So that we say let them come and go or not, that's what happens anyways. But is the observation of our thoughts the goal? So by observing the thoughts that come, we'll learn about ourselves. Maybe we'll learn about, oh yeah, that preoccupies me, or this is my pattern, or this is my belief, this is the story that I'm telling to myself, this is what matters to me, or oh well, this is new, or this is unusual and a little weird, oh I didn't even know I had those things in my mind, crazy. So again, we learn about ourselves. That is very good. Now what happens when we hold our breath? And I'm not talking about box breathing or, hold your breath 5 seconds, 10 seconds, exhale, hold your breath, inhale, hold your breath. It's very good. There is value to it, but quickly we breathe again. But when we don't breathe for a long time, what happens? Universally, everyone who doesn't know this practice, who does not practice this practice, will get universally negative, agitated, impatient, frustrated, will want to change their mind, and they maybe said, I will commit to the longest I can, and that longest you can actually quickly is like, no, just that's enough already. So typically everything that is going to happen to the mind is negative. How can you possibly meditate? Because normally you sit in a place and you can breathe slowly. So whatever stress, frustration, impatience, agitation you have in your mind, it's going to help you regulate that, down-regulate it, like calm it down, quieten it. So now not only you cannot use slow breathing to tranquilize, to calm down your mind, not only you cannot use slow breathing, but on top of that, you're not breathing at all, which means that you have an increasing stress. It's a physiological stress of your nervous system who wants to make you breathe, because everybody knows that if you don't breathe, ultimately you will die. And the longer you hold your breath, the higher that stress goes. And so the more your physical agitation, your mental negativity and your emotional stress go up. How do you meditate? Through this, precisely.
Lovely. That was
Precisely. You create a perfect opportunity to not only observe yourself, but everything you're going to observe about yourself, you're not going to like because you're under stress. You do not stay away from the stress, you create it. That's a bit crazy. Well, in fact, it's very purposeful, it's very intentional. You create that stress so that you can create that negative response, and you can really, it's in your face, and you can really see who you are in that moment. How you respond to that stress is really an expression of who you are, because it's on you. Anything that happens to your mind is what happens in your mind, which means it is your mind that makes it happen. You cannot say, well, that's because of this. Okay. And now you are in a perfect place to not only observe your mind, but the mind places itself in a perfect situation to alter itself, to decide what response it decides to have, and to establish that response, which is the antidote, which is the opposite of everything negative. So let's say, of course, you become quickly impatient. That's a perfect opportunity to practice patience. Um, your mind starts to really run wild. Perfect opportunity to practice clarity, slowness of the mind. You become frustrated. Perfect opportunity to practice contentment, appreciation, gratefulness. You feel that it hurts, that you're suffering. Perfect opportunity to practice self-compassion. You think that you want to stop already, that you're not strong enough. You feel weak in your ability to commit. Perfect opportunity to practice self-discipline and willpower, um, and so forth.
lovely. Understood.
If you do not practice who you choose to be, you will not become who you choose to be. You will not be who you choose to be. If you wait for the outside world to bring you the circumstances that create the opportunities to show who you are, who you've decided to be, let's say, you won't need to wait long for problems to have problems. Okay, for instance, like some problems in your life. Okay, or everybody has the problem. Well, they are problems, but there are also opportunities. Opportunities to, I practice my positivity, I practice my patience, I practice my acceptation, my acceptance of what is. I practice trust or faith in the resolution, the good resolutions, etc. I don't become impatient. I don't become frustrated. I don't, and or if I am, I mindfully decide to choose a different behavior that is that has more goodness to it. Okay, situations of life will happen that provide us the opportunity to express the wisdom that we want to express, because it aligns with who you choose to be. That's not always easy, okay? But sometimes, or to be generous, or so many ways. So many, because there are qualities of the human mind, and there are also the opposite, which is the not so good aspects, we cannot call them qualities, not so good aspects of a human mind and therefore of a human behavior. Which side do we want to go? On which side do you want to stay and be? And from what values do you want to anchor the experience that we are and that we call life? That is the question. So when we hold our breath and we meditate through that, we create a stress. By default, the answer and the response is negative. So we create every time we do that an opportunity to practice the opposite. It's very binary, okay? Pleasant and unpleasant, light or dark, positive, negative, good or bad, patient or impatient, uh, content and appreciative or discontent and self-entitled, etc., 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 etc. So that's the practice. It's not just observation of your thoughts or just observing the mind. It is not just, oh, what happens to the mind when you hold your breath? We all know what will happen to the mind. The question is, what does the mind choose to make happen to itself in that moment? This is, in fact, the question that is right there in front of us in every single moment we are alive. Who do we choose to be in every moment? And that who is not has nothing to do with my hair, my beard, what I look like, my job, my status. Oh, no, no, we're not talking about that. All this is external. We're talking about internally. The who I choose to be is in the form of an expression of this consciousness, and it can be expressed in many ways. The expression of laughter is not the expression of crying and sadness, etc. So there are many possibilities for that experience to happen, because that's what we are. We are happening. All of us are happening in this moment. How do we choose to happen? That is the precious gift, the precious responsibility and choice that we all have. But it's not one choice once, it's in the moment, continuously and continuously and continuously, and to become skilled at it, we must practice.
Amazing. That was really insightful. I mean, totally makes sense. It's a very fresh perspective of breath work and meditation, a very different kind of a perspective that we don't usually hear about. And correct me if I'm wrong, but how I understood and how I view it is, when we meditate usually, or even do some sort of a breath work, it's usually to really calm ourselves down, or a little escape window from our stressed out otherwise day, but here with breath holder work, we would be actually putting ourselves into the situations where we face our battles, where we pick the battles that we face, and we learn in that moment how to be patient, how to be calm, and how to react or accept when that kind of thing happens. And that's a really amazing way to look at it. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on your show, on your podcast.
Lovely. Lovely. That was very insightful, and I personally have so many takeaways from this, and I'm sure our listeners do too. As we conclude our podcast, is there any message, any last thoughts that you'd like to leave us with for our audience?
I simply wish everyone a good moment right now and a good life. That's it.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much. And for the ones who are more curious to learn more about natural movement, firstly, you can definitely get a once book, which is
That is
really
so nice
amazing.
of you. Oh, that is so funny that we both have a copy in our hands.
It's
Yeah,
an
it's a very
amazing book.
complete book.
I was thrilled to look that, we do have a book available and to go more in depth with it. And it's really like a Bible. You have so much details in it. And it's really very interesting. Wherever you are, in whichever country, wherever you are, you can definitely get this and learn a lot more in detail about it. And also do check out MovNat and One Social. You can find the details in the description below. And I'd say that subscribe to the newsletter of MovNat. I did the same, and it's really great that you guys are doing, because we get to see these mini courses of MovNat and natural movement and learn a lot more from that, no matter which country, what part you are, and it's really amazing to educate ourselves that way. So definitely go sign up for the newsletter. It's been really helpful and insightful.
Sakshi, you are so graceful and joyful and enthusiastic. I really appreciate your energy. It feels like honey. It's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That means a lot for me coming from you. That's it for today. Thank you so much, Avan, once again for gracing our podcast. And I'm sure a lot of Indians out here are waiting to attend one of your retreats. We hope to be your host in India and sometime, have you in person, have the MoveNet team, and really experience the power of natural movement and educate ourselves with that, get more in touch with ourselves and where we came from. So we really hope to see you. I hope you do plan. I hope MoveNet does
I
plan
do.
to.
I do. I will. I cannot wait the day I will visit the beautiful and a powerful country that is India. It is absolutely fascinating and the source of so much value and knowledge for all mankind. Yes.
Lovely. Amazing. Thank you so much, Avan. That is it for today's episode. I am Sakshi Pawar and I'll be your host for the Settle or Be Better podcast. So stay tuned while we bring more inspiring stories your way. You know the drill. Subscribe to the Settle or Be Better podcast, like, share, and comment on our videos. And oh, hit the bell icon, because you don't want to miss the mind boggling health discussions we're about to bring for you. Why settle when you can be better?